Stop recording. Stop recording. Button.
Hello all, today I'm going to tell you why I think you should avoid like the plague the absolute worst scumbag airline on the planet, Ryanair, otherwise known as Ratbag Air from my point of view, which you'll hear why very soon. As you'll know, most of you will hopefully know anyway, in the UK, this particular airline in September made a very big cock up over pilots' holidays or some such. Screwed up a lot of flights and affected hundreds of thousands of people, myself being one of them. Now, I was supposed to be going to an activity holiday arranged by a certain blind and visually impaired sports club, who I won't name, because whilst if I wanted to be unreasonable, I could say if they'd had their holiday in the UK, as they've done with all their previous holidays, rather than coming up with all these flash international ideas, then what happened wouldn't have happened. You know, I could say that if I wanted to be unreasonable, but end of the day, it was not the club's fault. It was entirely down to this stupid scumbags at Ryanair, these stupid scumbags at Ryanair. Well, I was supposed to be going to Pisa on the 16th of September. Now, because I live in Cambridgeshire and the others are in the London area, rather than going from Gatwick, which would have set me back £100 to get there, would have been faffing around on 3 trains and taken about 3.5 hours. I wanted to go from Stansted, which from my point of view would have set me back £16. I'd have only had to get 1 train and it would have taken just about an hour. So a great deal of difference, not just a bit of a difference. Now, with it being a first time for me, I had no idea that Ryanair had such an absolutely diabolical track record. You know, and I mean, end of the day, it took a lot of work for me to hopefully try and make sure this holiday didn't go pear-shaped, because I've only really been on holidays in the UK before, so having to sort out all the other bits and pieces for an international trip was quite honestly a complete pain in the behind, and then having it turned to excrement basically because of these scumbags at Ryanair was a real kick in the nuts, quite honestly. And as if that wasn't bad enough, I didn't get notified about this cancellation until sort of the day before I was due to go. So of course when I phoned up Ryanair to try and sort it out so that I could go, it took me over 40 minutes to get through to them on the phone. And then they were absolutely abysmally unhelpful, because they, well, to give an example, I explained to them that being totally blind, I either needed to be at Pisa specifically to either meet the transport that the club had set up for me, because I was going at a different time to the rest of them, to get me to where we were staying, or at the very least to meet up with the rest and tag along with them from their EasyJet flight from Gatwick. Well, they just didn't listen at all and thought a, quote, sensible alternative, unquote, heavy sarcasm, was to send me to a different airport in Italy. Well, that was absolutely flaming useless, because the transport I'd arranged wasn't going to be there, the rest of the club weren't going to be there, so what good was that for someone who couldn't get around over there? Because over there I'd had none of the sort of apps, tools and services and help that I have over here, and couldn't even ask for any form of help because of the language barrier. You know, so that would have been completely useless, and they just obviously had absolutely no consideration of my needs as a disabled person at all. As if that wasn't bad enough, of course I later found, too late, that they should have offered me an alternative flight on a different airline, according to a CAA rule, which they basically decided that they were going to stick 2 fingers up at. Which hopefully, if they'd actually followed it, would have probably meant I could have had my holiday, and not lost out on the opportunities which I could have got there. The main ones being, with me being a fanatical open water swimmer, I really love my sea swimming, but very, very rarely get the chance to do it in the UK. I mean, if I get the chance to do it like once a year, I'm doing well. I'm very lucky, you know. Now, this place we were staying at had its own private beach, you know, good easy access. So I wouldn't have had any trouble getting to it. Wouldn't have had any worries about, you know, leaving like valuables around, because I could have left them in the hotel room and just took what I needed. You know, unlike anywhere else where I'd need to take, you know, the phone, keys, cab money, train ticket and all that other stuff. And, you know, try and find somewhere to leave. It wouldn't have had any of that over there. So I could have gone in the sea at least once a day, if not twice a day over there. And they also had this paddle boarding for blind and visually impaired people, which is the best of my knowledge they don't do over here. So those opportunities, thanks to Ryanair, have gone completely down the toilet. You know, I'm not going to get them again, because unlike other people, I can't just rebook that holiday, because unless that particular club decide to go there again, you know, I can't do it on my own, because I'm not going to get the help and support I need with things like the language barrier, getting around over there, etc. I mean, it's not exactly easy in the UK, but like I said, at least I've got a few decent apps and tools, and, you know, I know what services I can call on and so on, to make things hopefully relatively easy. And Ryanair just didn't give a toss about any of that. As if that wasn't bad enough, when I said about compensation for what I'd lost out on the trip, I wish I'd recorded the phone call now, because they basically told me a downright lie and said that I would get full compensation, which, as it turned out, was not the case. Because when I submitted the compensation claim, which was another fiasco because they were too bone lazy to take it over the phone. No, you had to do it flipping online, which even when I explained to them that their site wasn't accessible for screen reader users. A screen reader basically is the bit of software on a computer, phone or tablet that lets blind and visually impaired people access it with speech output, not input, output. I say that because a lot of people make that mistake. They still didn't want to know. So I do more faffing around, which was the very last thing I needed, quite honestly, because I was really on the point of losing it with them after the previous fiasco, you know, where they just hadn't listened to a word I'd explained to them about my needs as a blind person. And, well, eventually had to hang up with them because I just was going to lose it otherwise. So after I'd, you know, got all the receipts together, fannied around trying to get help getting it done online, and eventually managed to do it, what they fobbed me off with was their basic, you know, standard compensation. They ignored all the receipts that I put in, because I would have liked to have got the club's money back as well, because they subsidised, you know, half the cost of the accommodation, so it would have been, you know, good to get their money back as well. But no, Ryanair just totally ignored that and tried to fob me off with their standard compensation. So I emailed them back, told them it wasn't acceptable, got no response. So phoned them up and told them it wasn't acceptable. Didn't want to know again, because the trouble is you can't speak to the people you need to speak to, is half the problem. Probably because I don't want to get bawled out because they've got such an abysmal customer service attitude, if you ask me. So I then had to take it, and where the situation lies now, I've had to take it through the alternative dispute resolution service, which can take anything up to 60 working days before I even know if I'm going to get, you know, any extra. Because quite honestly, and as I said to them, I'll be happy with the full cost of the trip and hopefully recovering the club's money as well. But in addition, I think I'm entitled to significant extra reparation for the fact that I've lost out on these opportunities, lost out on this holiday, which I can't just rebook, and also for the absolutely disgusting treatment that I've received from Ryanair. And also, they thought an acceptable form of apology, even after all of this, was an 80 quid voucher which you can only use with them. Well, duh! Again, hadn't listened to a word that I told them about not being able to get around in other countries. And also, after their abysmal attitude towards me, I wouldn't fly with them if you offered me £1 billion, quite frankly. Also told them that, again got no response. So, yeah, my advice to anyone is avoid Ryanair like the plague. Because whilst whilst some people might go on about price, there's no point in paying, even if it is cheap, for something that you ain't going to get to where you want to go, is it? And also, a company that has that bad an attitude to customer service, quite honestly, in my view, does not deserve any customers whatsoever.
Camera chooser. Stop recording.